welcome to another Hi exclusive right here on Hi TV, your luxury channel. My name is Dima and I'm here at the IIHS Multiversity building in Keravalapitia, their brand new multifaceted facility added on to the IIHS facility. And with me is Dr. Kitsiri Edrisinghe, the co-founder and the CEO of IIHS. Welcome, Doctor. It's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Likewise.
Today we'll be talking about bridging the gaps for a fitting future and creating leaders and the benefits it creates for IIHS and us, our society as a whole. Now, Doctor, before we talk about the future, let's take a few steps back and talk about the IIHS history, the journey of IIHS itself. Now, you have over 2 decades of experience in your personal career and with IIHS as well. Let's talk a little bit about that and how it has helped you to build this solid background.
It's indeed a great story where medical doctors were working in America thought that they had to give something back to our country. And they came down to Sri Lanka in 2002 and started this small but beautiful organization where they were trying to address a national problem, that is exporting unskilled labor. They wanted to transform that to exporting skilled labor as a nurses. So this small nursing school started, and then it moved on, and then we all got involved in this whole project, and we managed to attract initially the foreign universities to create a global qualification, because when you look at nursing and the healthcare field, you need the recognized qualification for you to go out there to grab those jobs in the international market. So we did that well, and then we moved and they started delivering those programs in Sri Lanka to reduce the cost of training for our students. And then now we have moved into working with the industries, the healthcare industry, where they come and give the job offer whilst they are working, international players. And then our final, the current milestone is we are working on how to give the same opportunity that we have given to Sri Lankans to the South Asians. So that's where this multiversity project has been established. So we will definitely working. It's more of a national level where we stop people going out for studies. So there's saving of dollars to the country. And then once they train, we are sending them out, so they would get some money back to the country. And then, of course, when we get foreign students in the region, that will add to the national dollar reserves as well.
Well, we've seen all those steps happening in front of our eyes here at IIHS. Now let's talk a little bit about education as a whole. How do you see it happening here at IIHS?
Well, traditionally the education has been a concept where we inculcate the knowledge, the skill, the attitude, the aptitude and the value set. That was the traditional way of looking at education. Now we, with our support and the experience in the international market, because we are producing students, graduates to the international market, which we are slightly ahead of, or maybe at a different level, what Sri Lankan education is. So we look at education as a process where you turn mirrors into windows. If you really look at South Asian mindset of education, is that teachers will emulate themselves and tell students to look at me, I'm the one, this is my knowledge and you better have it. Versus you turn that mirror into windows, where kids would start thinking beyond this, the teacher. Because knowledge is at the fingertips of everyone today. So it's high time that as education institutes, we should look at, let them, you just drive them, open the window, let them think beyond that. So that's called more of a divergent thinking pattern. We have many answers to a question. The second one is that education is opening. Secondly, the education is the opening the empty mind. Traditionally, this part of the world, we fill that mind with knowledge, etc., etc. Today's education is, modern education is that you open that mind rather than filling them up. So therefore, whole idea is to create these students more independent learners, create these students as divergent thinkers. They have many answers to a question. So that's the modern trends of education, where you pass the ball on to students and let them take it and run. So we have seen that happening, where students go from our systems or South Asian systems to the first world. They really struggle during the first 2 semesters. So that would kill their potential. So in a way, what we are doing is orientating them to grab for in education as well as for a job.
And that's your personal opinion when it comes to education as well?
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking a little bit more about leadership and how it goes hand in hand with education. Welcome back after the break. I'm sitting down with Dr. Kitsari Adrisinghe here at IIHS Multiversity, talking about creating future leaders. Now, speaking about leaders and leadership, Doctor, you have been the pillar of strength, one of the many pillars behind IIHS. So, in your opinion and your experience as a leader, how do you see the leadership taking place and being molded among your student body?
It is indeed a very good question. So countries like ours, we are really searching for leaders. It's a good question. So basically, leadership is, in my own perception, is that initially leaders should look at things differently. If we look at the world, there's a name called paradigm. Your paradigm has to be different to the others. Then you can come out as a leader. Otherwise, you'll be part of the other lot. So initially, it's to thinking differently at the same thing, but that paradigm is very important. And then once you do that, it's important as a leader to understand, study the situations. And different situations, you need different leaderships, qualities. So therefore, it's important to study whatever the situation, local, foreign, global, all that. Once you understand the environment, you draw up a nice plan. Very simple plan where others could understand. The hindrance in modern leaders, they have superb concepts, and the strategies, unfortunately, cannot be understood by the hardly any, even the people around them. So therefore, it's very important to know how to put that thing in a more simplistic way where the common man could understand. So then anyone could understand. Then you create followers or the team behind you. And then at the end of the day, we are born, so humans are born to be leaders. So we led the whole animal kingdom. And then from small days onwards, our development milestones are geared to become leaders. So we, in a way, in the South Asian culture, we kill that. Because 2 to 7 years, kids are the ones, they're bubbly and they run around and learn, brain growth, everything happens. And then suddenly your grandmother or grandfather comes and hold them back, thinking that they are very fragile. So that agility would come up. It's a spontaneous leadership that they have. So learning all that, and we've looked at what we get are the kids coming from high school. They've already, their minds are set. Hormones are in a different surge now, just at the peak of that. And they have a role conflict, their personalities. They don't know who they are really. All that happens. So when they come to us, on top of that, the education, they're very confused. Because suddenly you go to a rat race and so-called advanced levels in Sri Lanka. And you get to hardly have a probability of getting there. If you don't get into that small narrow tunnel, you are considered as a excluded student, because you are kind of internally, these kids are depressed and they don't believe in themselves. That kind of input that we have, our learner profile. So we For us, luckily, with our experience and the support of our international and national faculties, we managed to understand what the situation is. So we start including them in education. So we don't have any problem including anyone, disabilities, learning disabilities, physical disabilities. We don't say no to any student. So we take them in, their previous qualification, we can match them and take them in. That's the beauty of our organization. And then how can we get them towards the core objective, that's attaining marks or scores. So we've created in such a way that they definitely, almost 95% of the kids are hitting more than 3.2 GDP, grade point average. That's a huge achievement ourselves. So we don't bother much in the academic part of it, but we do mind the behavioral change, because an educated person should have a different behaviors. This behavior is the one that we create as creating global citizens. So we are not creating for local entities, because they have to be global thinkers. So we do a few things amongst ourselves. So one of the things that we have to do is to make them more talk sense. So we mostly would see adults, when the kids are talking, they would say they are talking nonsense. So no, they are talking sense. We don't understand that nonsense, because we have to guide them to talk sense that is based on evidence. South Asians, they just pick something and then start talking. But these new kids are not. They go to Google, they check, and they come up with beautiful concepts and latest knowledge. So we create them to become, it's called evidence-based thinkers. So we do separately, we have a separate entity other than the curricular activities, academic activities. They work on that through scientific committee. Then there is to create leadership and then teamwork. We have the student council. Our student council are totally different to the traditional student council that you would see in this part of the world. They add value to the society rather than disrupting the society. So that creates these leadership qualities. And you have to have conflicts amongst yourself, because especially at this level, you have to have conflicts. You learn those through conflicts. They are initially called disruptive, but at the end of the day, they learn a lot. There's no disruption. Disruption of the negative thoughts, negative minds. So we are very happy about it. And then surely you have to groom them towards having a superb mental stability. So we have this different arts and drama societies, and then flora and fauna clubs. So many other things that would ease them out and then enjoy life at the end of the day.
Well, there you go. It sounds like a holistic approach, and giving the kind of support and strength that they need, that brings out the best leaders here at IIHS. Well, Doctor, you pretty much answered most of my next question as well, talking about the student life here at IIHS. But let's take a day out of the normal calendar and talk about how a student life flows through.
I mean, I'm not the one to answer that. I think we should ask from the student itself. But nevertheless, from my bird's eye view, what I have seen, I can just explain. See, typical students, as I told you before, the input is not that great. So what we do is, we've seen the first year they are bit frozen, and we have to break them a little bit slowly. So we help them to relax. The second year, absolutely relax. Third year, they become humble, bubbly kids. That's the word that I use. So happiness is the kids' bubbliness would come up with that. So typical day, they would come for 6-hour sessions. So unfortunately for them, 6 hours are not really lectures. So only half of that, 50% is lectures. So others, they'll have to do. We put the ball back to them. So 3-hour lectures are about 1.5 max. Then they go for activity sessions. So activity-based learning would give them togetherness, collaboratively they work together. And then at the end of the day, they start talking rather than being at a lecture for 3 hours straight, like us, what we do, what we did. But for them, like it's 1.5 hours, and that is also very interactive. And then they go out, there are separate collaborative learning centers, they do their thing, and then come back, teach the others. So if you really look at the Bloom's pyramid, the famous learning style, learning, memory, retention pyramid, where in a typical lecture you have only 5% retention in your brain. But if you teach the others, it's 90%. So that's the best that you can do. I mean, if you reflect yourself, you would understand most of the learning that you did, maybe on a corridor, maybe on a bus halt, maybe inside the bus, not inside the classroom. So that's what it is called incidental learning. So there are names for those, what we did. But we are getting those as a concept and pushing them towards to do that. And then evenings, we hardly any homework. We try to do everything here because activity-based learning would give them marks for their assignment. Yeah, towards the afternoon, basically they hardly have any homework to be done. So what they do is they have major activities, co-curricular activities, project work. So it's more, and there are events. Every other week there is an event. So my schedule is very busy because they always invite us to come and join them. So it's a great student life that we have created, and we are very happy that the students are happy. As an educationist, I personally would look at that's the best satisfaction that you get. A, they have a good life. They would have a good student life, and B, they achieve their outcomes. That's the good grades, and C, they grab that job which was waiting for them internationally or nationally, and then that's the happiness that we get.
Well, sounds like a perfect balance and combination of happiness, goals, and your future goals attained, all in one happy package. When we come back, we'll talk about the smart teaching system that they have here at IIHS. We're going in for a short break. See you right after. Welcome back to the show. I'm in conversation with Dr. Kitsiri Edrisinghe here at IIHS Multiversity in Kerawalapitia. Now, before we went into the break, we were talking about the importance of education as a whole. Coming back, we're going to talk about the actual teaching methods used here at IIHS. Now, I've been told that you use a method called the smart teaching method. Let's talk a little bit about it.
Yes, just to clarify a few words on this, traditionally, we try to create our students more intelligent, if I may say, and then that's giving more knowledge and that kind of a thing. Versus now today, intelligence is good to have, but if you are not smart enough, you can't conquer the world. If you write down, ask from someone who are the more intelligent people in the world, where the IQ of 95, nobody can understand. You have to Google it and see. There are about 5-6 people. But if you ask about smart people in the world, you come starting from Mark Zuckerberg, all these Google inventors, Apple inventors. They're basically high school dropouts and university dropouts. It doesn't make sense, isn't it? So therefore, it's very important for us to understand what this intelligence and the smartness is. A country of our country, full of intelligent people. We have the highest literacy in the world. Unfortunately, we are so-called bankrupt country now. So it doesn't make sense again. So therefore, it's very important to look at what smartness is. So we looked at 7 C's in teaching. The first C is basically centricity. So as I told you before, we pass the ball into the students. So we go away from teacher centricity to student centricity. There are many things that we do to do that, and it's very important to do that. So that would create the students thinking differently, and they really enjoy. And then secondly, we give them a choice. Now, typically education has no choice. So we have really limited choice in the South Asian countries. But once they come in, before they come in, we would counsel them and see what's the ideal one for them, education, whether it's nursing or when they don't want to touch nurses or patients, you can do, X, Y, and Z, physiotherapy, psychology. You want to distance from the patient, direct care, you can do that. So that choice is there itself. And then once they come into the program, during teaching, we give them a choice. So we have different groups, let's say, for example, and each one is given different way of presenting that activity. It could be a role play, it could be a flip chart, it could be a PowerPoint presentation, it is just a chat or the debate. So within the program or lesson, we give them a choice. It's very important to give. And then finally, when they complete the program, also they have a choice to go to many countries. So that's we are basically given. And then the great learning happens with collaboration. Next C is a collaboration. We have allowed them to collaborate. Student and staff should collaborate. They should discuss openly. And then students themselves should collaborate. So all that is very important too. So we have collaborative learning centers. So that is that you have, traditionally we have 5 people around, you take a flip chart and write. And we understood, we found that once you do a physical collaboration, that's fine, but only 2 people would work. Other 3 would look up and do something. So what we did was, we inculcated learner management system into their, so we have the first virtual hybrid kind of a collaborative learning center in South Asia. So we did that, and it's working very well. All 5 will have to enter, time bound, and the lecturer can see it from anywhere in the world. So we have our international faculty too would know what they are doing, So they have to contribute to collaboration. And then the other important thing is in education, the other C is consistency. So students becomes very confident. There's a consistency in this education system, the module that you teach, the teacher itself. So teachers can't have changing modes, different modes, but they can have fun modes. That's a different story. But at the end of the day, the consistency. So we give a choice to them, but the whole outcome we know. Each lesson outcomes, they have to have that. So the consistency is important. We manage many methodologies to make it very consistent. And then the education is nothing, as I told you before, if you don't inculcate the creativity in kids. The world is so changing so rapidly. You need creative people. When the COVID hit us, we were frozen, we were paused for ages, 2-3 years, because we had hardly any creative guys to come back these things. So creativity, many forms, curricular and co-curricular activities, we have organized this, inculcating creativity. Creativity is one of the things that having more answers to a question, different. So that's part of it. And it's not that inventing something. Creativity is that you add value, which has economic sense. That's in today's world. And then the other thing is that other C is the critical thinking. So we have so many things on your menu. How can you pick the food that suits you in that menu card? So that's a critical thinking. That's very important in today's world, because we are counting every day. These kids will encounter many problems. They are 21st century kids. They have really look at critical thinking and analyze everything and get the data and then come up with solutions. So that's a very important C that we do that most of the time. And then finally, as a teacher, the final C is caring. So how do you care students? So we have to boundaries. How can you love a kid? You might not like him. He might be naughty, you might not like him, but you have this love towards kids, towards the student. So there are many things that we do to get them, we do care about them. As I told you, because they come from different backgrounds, their hormonal levels are different. their mindset different. It's very bubbly, changes every second. So teachers should understand that, give some space for them, and then make sure they achieve their academic goals, their extracurricular goals, finally creating them a global citizen.
Well, so many aspects and so many areas are considered into a smart teaching method and making a smart student. Now, the next question seems rather obvious, but I would like an answer from you as well. Why is it important to create future leaders from now on itself?
Leadership is absolutely important in these kids, because they would encounter new problems we have never seen or heard. We felt it with COVID. What if happens, the oxygen concentration in the air that we breathe goes down tomorrow? What are we going to do? I mean, what if the war, the cultures, and the economic confrontations of everything based on economies, and then how can you make those value set of each culture, cultural identity, how are we going to keep those? Those are the things the adults are thinking. So this leadership, creating better leaders would get them this so-called confused and youth with conflicting minds. How can you get them together? You have to have leaders inculcated them. That is an important thing not only for Sri Lanka or South Asia, for the whole human race.
Interesting perspective. Now, before we conclude, Doctor, whenever we drive into the multiversity, it's always a new experience. What we saw last time is made better and made more beautiful. So you've come a long way. Let's talk a little bit about the process of bringing multiversity to where it is right now.
It's about how can you get a concept to a reality. We all have beautiful minds. Sri Lankans are great in thinking. I mean, if you look at our history, it has been there, and then we have been very environmentally friendly. Whatever we did was we went along with the environment. So coming back from that and being at health, and we had the oldest hospital in the world, so we thought it's best that we inculcate all these value sets, our history, and then our environment is threatened by humans as well as the others. So how can you create an educational institute that would cover all these areas? So when we started, of course, it was the worst time ever for construction industry, and then but we managed to come through that, thankfully, for the professionals that work with us and the contractors of this, and really good professional approach that we had. Yeah, we all know that any building would have living humans, users are the living stuff. But how can you make the building alive with the environmental support, how to merging with the environment? We have about 5-acre land, we have about another 3-acre marshy land with a jungle, and we have a beautiful canal going on the side, outside the expressway. So all that is considered. So we've worked on a project where we have zero environmental omission in the wastewater or etc. etc. And we are creating this building with only 50% is air conditions. Rest is naturally ventilated. We use natural stuff, and then the building will be covered with more creepers and the plants that would serve as a cover to protect us from heat, as well as it gives a live mind when you see greenery. So going forward, I think it's a living, growing building. So you may see different things at different times of the year, and then we hope that in another 2 to 3 years, this will merge with the whole environment. That's what most of the top environmentally friendly building. It is not that you put up a building and put some plants around it. It's about the whole living, creating a living building, and we are very grateful for the concepts, and then people, the professionals who work with us, who took this challenge, and then the most challenging times, and so we are very happy that we have to go to the grand launch in another couple of weeks' time.
Well, Doctor, it's always a pleasure to sit down and have a chat with you. It's very informative and entertaining as well. If you want to get in touch with the IIHS team, don't forget to look them up on their website or call them on their hotline and get all the information and get your future sorted with IIHS Healthcare. Well, until we see you again with another Hi exclusive, take care and be safe.